It's a big offer, and BYU can't match it. That's the quote from national media about Kalani Sitake to Penn State. Buddy, you think BYU can't match it? This is an emergency Locked On Big 12.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Monday night, everybody. Welcome into an emergency Locked On Big 12, coupled with a bonus episode. I'll give you a complete recap of this week in the conference, as well as the latest on Kalani Sitake possibly leaving BYU for Penn State. This one is nuts. I'm going to have TJ Pittenger join the show here momentarily, and we'll go back and forth talking about it. I didn't think, I was at 100% certainty 2 days ago, that Kalani Sitake was going to stay at BYU. Now it seems a little more blurred. Multiple national media reporters coming out and saying that it's a legitimate possibility. Liam Blutman saying regarding Penn State, he'd be very surprised if the hire is not Sitake. Heupel declined Penn State. He says Riley's out of the sweepstakes. There is the Georgia Tech staff is not there. He says the quote is, there's still a chance Sitake can go back, ask BYU for more money, and meet halfway. But again, I'd be very, very surprised. People think I don't know BYU has big-time money. I do. I'm emphasizing how big the offer is by the fact that BYU has plenty of money, will not be able to match the full amount. Wrong. I mean, BYU has a principle, right? Like there's probably a number in there where you don't go past that number, but wrong. Zero chance that BYU can't match your, big-time Penn State money. Not a thing. So I'm going to give you, for the Big 12 fans who are like, I don't really care about this, I'm going to give you a complete rundown with ESPN Central Texas of this week in Big 12 football. For the BYU fans who are dialed in this coaching search, here's my take on Sitake. And look, again, I'm going to make this point here in a second. 11-1, you're not in the playoff. That's such a slap in the face. That's so much disrespect for a Power 4 conference. Because Penn State at 11-1 is number 3 in the country, so I'd want to at least explore my options too. Because I can't have an opportunity to win a national championship unless I'm undefeated. That's bogus. The College Football Playoff Committee is helping do this to the Big 12 and do this to Kalani and do this to the head coaches of this league. That sucks. TJ, let's keep the conversation going.
Could Kalani Sitake be coaching his final game at BYU this weekend? Wow.
I mean, just look, hearing that statement kind of makes you shudder a little bit. It's not fun to hear. Yeah, he could. I don't think he will, and there's a lot to unpack with this. But the further we get, even still early in the week, the more I think, ma'am, there's a way that this could happen. So like TJ, I texted you, said, hey, we really need to talk about Kalani Sitake and whether or not this is a possibility of him leaving BYU. And you said, is that like some clickbait stuff or something? I was like, dog. There's a shot. He's number 1 on the odds right now to go to Penn State. There's a real chance that he would win at Penn State. And look, as I've said on social media, and I said it on my show, outright, if I'm an 11-1 team in my conference and cannot get in the college football playoff as an at-large, I want to go to a different conference. I want to go somewhere where I can be respected. I want to go somewhere where I have a better shot to go to the college football playoff. So I wouldn't blame Sitake. What comes with success is opportunities. So him checking out an opportunity, the same way a guy like Scott Drew, who's super loyal at Baylor, checked out Kentucky. I wouldn't blame Kalani Sitake for doing that, of course. But the more I start to say things like that, the more I'm like, oh, shoot, what if they make this a really good deal for him and he can go coach at the Big Ten level of college football and at Penn State, where they do have incredible resources and an incredible fan base. And it reminds me a lot of like a BYU up in the Northeast. Liam Blutman says regarding Penn State at this current moment, I would be very surprised if the hire is not Sitake. In fact, I think a deal could be done fairly soon. It's a big offer and BYU can't match it. Now, I don't think that BYU is unable to match. That's not the case here, Liam Blutman. That is bad reporting on his part. BYU can match pretty much anything if they want to. He says, as I stated a few days ago, Heupel declined Penn State. I don't know why that got steamed today out of nowhere. As of today, Riley is out of the Penn State sweepstakes. Tried to get leverage for a Georgia Tech extension, or Georgia Tech coaches try to use leverage for an extension. None of that worked out. Sitake seems to be the guy, and this guy would be very, very surprised if he didn't go to Penn State. Those are the reports that are starting to worry me across the country, and but it's possible. Anything is possible. But when you say Kalani Sitake coaching his last game at BYU, at least it's on the table.
I feel like I need a breath.
Isn't that weird, man? I don't
even need smoke, and I can use a cigarette right now.
Good violation.
For real. I'm not going to, for the folks watching. I'll just stick with the Diet Dr. Pepper. Also, well, no, that one's good. Back to the Sitake stuff. We've seen so many alums, like Dillingham being floated at LSU if they would have missed on Lane, and then Brahm's name, and then Brent Key's name. And man, I just think it's a little bit different when it's an alum coaching at a school. And so does that, would he really leave? I understand. Listen, as a guy that's in the ACC, I understand the way that our programs are treated. Again, there were other circumstances, but Florida State got left out after being undefeated and then winning a conference title game with a third string quarterback that would not have played in the eventual playoff. So I get it. I understand access. I understand the way that the Big 12 and the ACC programs are unfortunately viewed by most of the country, and certainly by the College Football Playoff Committee, ESPN, all these places. But man, what an alum, unless the money was just double or something insane and BYU just said, hey, we're going to stand on our principle and not do this. Like, I know there's concern, but I just don't think I could wrap my head around him leaving.
I couldn't. And I didn't want to put any stock into this. But then again, it's been almost 10 years. And look, I've had jobs for 3 years that I was having success in. And I thought, if the right offer comes down the pipeline, and I'm not saying that I am Kalani Sitake or he is me, but everyone's a human being. And when the right offer calls, when the right phone call calls, and if your family says, or your wife says, or your kids say, or your dad says, or any of those things, then maybe you do look at it and say, what if? Now, I have talked to Kalani, not in the wake of this, but I've talked to him before to understand his heart, I think, and how he values BYU and the way that his wife loves BYU and loves everything Cougars. And I think his kids are happy. His family's happy. What a place to be. He's the next Lavelle Edwards there. He's a legend already. Could be a statue coach that could name the field after him. You throw that away. They'll say thank you. They'll love you for the 9 years, 10 years of service that you gave them. But once you walk out the door, you don't get the statue anymore. It doesn't get to be, oh, we love you so much. Thank you for your service, and we're going to continue to root for you against us. Now you're the new head coach at Penn State. You don't get to have that. You lose access to the BYU family the way that you had it in Provo. And then I'm not saying they're going to hate him. Obviously, they wouldn't. They would love him to death, and it would still be, thank you for your service. But thank you for your service, and the legendary statue coach who gave BYU his career. Those are two very, very different things. There's certainly, again, there's a likelihood here, but the reason I don't want to see it, the reason I hope it does not happen, is I could foresee Kalani Sitake. Grass isn't greener. I'm going to stay at BYU and be the second greatest coach in school history behind Lavelle Edwards, or the greatest coach in school history right there with Lavelle Edwards, and right off into the sunset as a Cougar for life. That's where I would want my legacy to be. But if enough from money to will make it happen, to bring your staff to we want you in Happy Valley to win a national championship, here's how we can give you a more stable place to win a title. That's where I think a coach can be swayed. And again, TJ, a big piece of this is on the College Football Playoff Committee, leaving at 11-1 Penn State's number 3 in the country. They're number 3 in the country. 11-1 BYU is outside of the college football playoff. That is why, if I'm a head coach, I'm looking around the world and saying, shoot, if I'm going to get no respect unless I go undefeated at my school, then I'm not sure if I can keep doing this. I don't know if it's worth the effort because I want to win a national championship. That's where it's a human being thing. That's where I understand. That's where the Big 12's at a huge disadvantage right now. Yeah, and you talked about this, but BYU, just with... they certainly have the resources. What would be their appetite to, you talked about the reporting and, I don't know if they can match. Yeah, it's not a question of can, it's will. How outrageous would BYU get with a salary match? Man, what's Kiffin's? Like 15 mil a year? 13? Right now. I think if Penn State, if Penn State said, hey, we'll give you the Lane Kiffin treatment, BYU would come back around, especially the way their NIL, the way their donorship looks right now, the way their season ticket prices have gone up. BYU would look at Kalani and say, hey, you're our guy. If you want the role here, then here's will match what Penn State gives you up to that. Now, if they said $20 million a year, I think Jay Hill's a great head coach. I think there are a lot of options down the pipeline for BYU to get a great. They just hired a basketball coach who is all pro. I mean, they got one of the best basketball hires you could possibly imagine. They would do that again in football. They know they could do that. Brian Santiago knows he could do that. So if Kalani wants to walk, then man, if ultimately there's nothing BYU can do to keep him, the Cougars are still going to be at a very good spot because their next hire is going to be top notch. That said, I really do hope, and I think the university does as well, that next season, come game one, Kalani's the man out there.
I might be delusional. I might not be right about this. I don't see him leaving. I'm saying, like, if I got to put a prediction in now, I'm saying Sitake stays. Or what's your early prediction? Because we may have to continue to cover this. It may draw out. We may do more videos on it, but we reserve the right to change. But what's your gut right now?
48 hours ago, I would have told you Kalani Sitake 100% never leaving BYU. As of this moment, I think it's oof. Man, really burying the lead here, keeping you on your toes. I'm going to go.
I'm going to need another one of those honor code violations here in a minute.
I'm going to go 60-40. He stays, but that 40's climbing, and that's different. That's weird. Now that's only the few distant sources that I've spoken with who just have this weird kind of pit in their stomach of just maybe this could be the one. So that's where I sit right now. Today's show is brought to you by Omaha Steaks. Look, I said it once, I'll say it again. If you want Kalani Sitake to stay at BYU, you're ordering him an Omaha steak and sending it right to the BYU front office saying, please, Kalani, stay. If you're a big fan of what Joey McGuire and the Campbell family have done at Texas Tech, you're probably sending them an Omaha steak. And their cyber sale is here, making your deals huge. I give Omaha Steaks almost every year as a gift to my dad. He loves cooked steak. He's not great at it, but he does it. And he loves to cook it. In Omaha, actually, the quality of the meat's so good, it helps the steak taste better. Incredibly tender steaks, rich flavor, and meals that make hosting or weeknight cooking easier. Burgers, comfort meals, sides, desserts, they have all of that, too. Save big with unforgettable gifts and Omaha Steaks. Visit omahasteaks.com for 50% off site-wide, extra 20% off select favorites during their cyber sale, and an additional $35 off. Use promo code COLLEGE at checkout. It's a whole lot of savings. omahasteaks.com, promo code COLLEGE, all caps COLLEGE. Terms apply. See site for details at Omaha Steaks.
Welcome back to the Press Box here on ESPN Central Texas. Joining us now, as promised, from Locked On Big 12, it is the one and only Drake Toll. Drake, how we doing on this Monday?
Ward, your Texas Tech Red Raiders are going to the Big 12 championship. Come on, smile a little bit, sound happy.
How about that? Red Raiders and BYU, 11 a.m. from AT&T Stadium in Arlington for the Big 12 championship. Yeah, it's kind of the matchup that everybody had circled and wanted to envision, didn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, these are the best two teams in the Big 12 conference. You can't even argue that. Utah is probably a square third, and I think you can't really argue that. But if you're looking at the league getting its best in its biggest moment, BYU and Texas Tech are both going to be that. Each of them 11-1. Each of them top 10 quality and top 10 caliber teams with defenses who I think could compete in the college football playoff. Now, Ward, I want to be very clear with a matchup like this, that the Big 12 needed this from an exposure standpoint, maybe more than an athletics standpoint. Last season, Iowa State and Arizona State were your two representatives for the Big 12 championship game, and the stadium was a third full. I mean, those are two fan bases that kind of struggled to get to Dallas. They didn't know they were going to the title game until late, and from there, it's tough to get from Ames to Dallas. You got a blue-collar fan base. Out in Arizona, I mean, it takes a couple years to drum up a whole lot of pomp and circumstance around that fan base to be able to get out, 1,000 miles away and see a college football game. BYU and Texas Tech, there are more Texas Tech alumni in Dallas than there are in Lubbock by far. And there are more BYU fans in Dallas than maybe any other city outside of Phoenix and Salt Lake because of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and their affiliation. This place, minimum right now, tickets you can find are $250. That's for standing room only. We're talking Cowboys level prices on the game in Arlington. That's massive for exposure for the Big 12. This is the game the conference needed.
Drake, the last time these two teams played against each other earlier this season, it was a 29-7 win for Texas Tech over BYU. Has there been anything that's been changed with these two teams that might result in a different outcome coming up at AT&T Stadium?
Yeah, I think this game's going to be much, much closer. And I don't want to take away what Texas Tech did in the matchup against BYU whatsoever, because the run defense from Tech was incredible. 27 carries for the Cougars for 67 yards is not very good. But take this into account. BYU turned the ball over 3 times. That's uncharacteristic for the Cougs. If they flip that script and Baron Morton throws a pick and BYU doesn't turn it over, we're at least talking about a closer game when we have Saturday at 11 a.m. Central Time kickoff. And another piece of this that I'm looking at is BYU's ability to get to the quarterback. 4 sacks on Baron Morton. Bear Bachmeier only took 1 sack in that game. And again, I'm not trying to take anything away from Texas Tech, but give you nuggets where BYU continues to be good in these areas and Tech falters in 1 or 2 different places. The Cougars can at least be in this game. The last stat that I point to, Texas Tech on the day had 149 rushing yards on 43 carries. Cameron Dickey and Jacoby Williams, the longest run for Dickey was 33 yards. Williams, his longest run was 43 yards. That's 76 yards on 2 carries. Half of their yardage came on 2 carries. The other half came on 41 carries. If BYU can limit the big plays, that's how they'll find success against the Texas Tech team that they forced to kick 5 field goals. The BYU defense stood tall in the red zone. That can help keep them in this game. It's just a question of whether or not the Cougars offense can put any more than 7 points on the board.
Drake, I don't know how it could get worse right now for Baylor. You announced that you're bringing back Aranda. We know the reasons. They've been talked about ad nauseum. All you had to do to salvage somewhat of a respectable season was win one of the last 3 games, limp into a bowl. They couldn't do that. They're another losing season. 3 of the 4 losing seasons that Baylor have had since 2010 have come under Aranda in his 6 years. And on top of all that, one of the big reasons why he was supposedly retained, the recruiting class is falling apart, and they've lost their top 2 recruits since the loss. Yeah. When does the downhill trajectory stop rocketing towards rock bottom?
Yeah, so what's so interesting for Baylor, there was a buffer at that 8-4 season going to a bowl game against LSU last year where people forgot the 3-9 campaign that Aranda and company put together the year prior. I actually went back. It's funny. I went back and listened to you and Cameron Stewart talking on the Drake Toll show the day that Aranda was retained in 2023. And after that 3-9 year, Jerry Hill sat down with Mac Rhodes and did a state of the program. And the conversation was prevalent that day where it felt like the university had told Bears fans that winning wasn't paramount, that Aranda was the right culture fit and that the recruits liked him, the kids liked him, and that he was a nice guy, but that winning wasn't necessarily part of the standard. And the fact that that was the statement in 2023 and now it's the statement again in 2025, it's a broken record. I want to actually go back to something that Max said in 2023, and obviously Rhodes is no longer with the program, but I think this rings true with why Baylor kept Dave Aranda. Rhodes told Jerry Hill at the end of that interview, he said, Baylor fans, Baylor family, you all are resilient and remember the reasons that you love Baylor. You love Baylor because of the Christian mission and the values of the university, and this is a university that just feels different. He almost said, in essence, this is the Disney World of universities. You love us, you know you love us. And so it's less of, hey, I want you to be a passionate, rabid fan that loves Baylor winning, and more so, remember how cute and fuzzy you felt when you went to line camp. Remember how nice it was to go fountain hopping. Remember how beautiful Patton F. Hall is. Think about those things. Don't think about winning football games. There is a very clear statement from the university and its administration that winning just isn't number one for Baylor football right now. It's not. It isn't. It's not a thing that Baylor has put as their top priority. And once everybody accepts that's the case, I think we'll all be able to sleep at night.
Drake Toll, Locked On Big 12, with us in the press box here on ESPN Central Texas. Is Dion back in Colorado?
I don't, I would have told you a couple weeks ago that Deion and Colorado would be just fine, and the reason being, again, the GDP of that place is growing so much. The acumen that he brings from a revenue standpoint is bar none unmatched, really, in college football. He's helped the entire city of Boulder grow. But as of today, his comments in his post-game press conference after their final loss just felt like the guy who doesn't have to do it anymore. And man, I feel for Deion a lot, because there is 3 years ago a version of Deion that's much different from today. 3 years ago, he's this cocky, he's Deion, right? It's synonymous with just who he was as a player, now who he is as a coach. But this is a guy who survived cancer over the offseason. And when he did survive cancer, they were talking about removing his bladder. I mean, there was an invasive procedure and a list of invasive procedures he went through to save his life, in essence, and he missed a large portion of the offseason just to come back and try to coach. And so what he's dealing with medically, what he's dealing with in his personal life, and the 3 years he's given to Colorado to raise that program up from a money standpoint, financially, and from a fan support standpoint, Colorado has not seen this boost maybe in its program's history. So I do think he's, and it's weird to say, but he's left them in a better spot. It's almost like, Ward, if somebody comes into it, I'll make it an everyday example. If somebody comes into a meat market and says, hey, I'm going to be your brand new manager, and they're really not a good manager for 3 years, but they, for some reason, pump $1 billion of their own dollars into the meat market, you're like, you know what? In the end, we had a kind of a bad manager for 3 years, but at least we got $1 billion. That's how Colorado feels. It's a net win, even though they're not winning football games. And so that's where I believe Colorado derives a lot of pleasure from having Deion still being the head coach right now, and where they'll still say, hey, that was a successful experiment if he's not the head man come next year. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is where I'm going for the Big 12 championship this weekend. Texas Tech and BYU, and the deals are incredible. I go to other ticket sites, and they seem just astronomical. How could I ever afford this? But Game Time is here for the Big 12 title and even the World Cup. That's right. The World Cup's coming back to North America for the first time since 1994. 48 teams for the first time ever. It's going to be massive, and you can go watch the World Cup. See the United States, I hope, with Game Time. Track price drops in real time. Get alerts when great seats open, and buy tickets the moment they hit the app. Pull up the app, see the layout. It makes it so simple to scroll through matchups and compare seat views. Pick a game, tap a section, and have your tickets locked within minutes. No confusion, no hunting for fine print. Take the guesswork out of buying World Cup tickets or Big 12 championship tickets, any of these tickets, every match, every concert, every event with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download the app, make an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Game Time. Go to Game Time. Do it today. Download that app.
Drake, we're hearing a lot of noise from Texas Tech fans trying to push and get Jacob Rodriguez in the Heisman conversation. Do you think that there's a realistic outcome that he officially gets in that conversation, or is it just not in the cards for him?
I don't see how Jacob Rodriguez is not squarely in the Heisman conversation, if not partially leading the way. And a big reason why is because the lack of talent at the top of college football that you say, oh, that's a recognizable name. And I just don't think that a guy like Julian Sayem has had his Heisman moment. I don't think that Fernando Mendoza, to me, screams Heisman Trophy. I do think that Jacob Rodriguez is that guy. He has more tackles than Manti Te'o had in 2012. He has 4.5 more tackles for loss, comparable sack numbers. He has 4 interceptions this season. He has 7 forced fumbles. Manti Te'o had 0 in his 2012 year where he finished second in the Heisman race. And Jacob Rodriguez has 3 touchdowns this season. He's a do-it-all guy who has the story to back it up. I love a Heisman story. I don't like a Heisman Trophy winner who paints his fingernails and the country hates him because he makes everything about himself. I want the guy who picks up, a walk-on offer from Texas Tech, takes it, pays his way through college, and now has well over 100 tackles and 7 forced fumbles alone. That's Jacob Rodriguez. That's where I think Rodriguez should be squarely in not just the Heisman conversation, but in New York as a representative for the Big 12 and a representative for Texas Tech. Jacob Rodriguez is a dog.
Drake Toll, Locked On Big 12, with us in the press box. Did Oklahoma State get it right with their hire? We won't know until they're on grass, but right now, do we think they got it right?
Yeah, Ward, I think it's a great question, first and foremost, and it's a question you have to ask about these coaching searches. But I think Oklahoma State actually looks better than a lot of these SEC schools. I was listening to different pundits across the country yesterday in radio and podcast realms, and the SEC's in a danger zone of, does Alex Golesh work out as a head coach? Does Will Stein work out? Is Ryan Silverfield from Memphis? Are these guys ready for the SEC? I don't think any of them in my brain are ready for the SEC. I do think that Eric Morris, who has the sign off of a guy like Patrick Mahomes, is going to be great at Oklahoma State. Another reason why he's bringing All-American caliber quarterback and running back from North Texas. Very good chance that a large portion of a North Texas roster that's about to go to the college football playoff ends up transferring with Morris to Oklahoma State, giving them an instant boost to win right away. It's similar to what Kurt Cignetti did going from James Madison to Indiana. He brought a lot of JMU guys, and people said, I'm not sure if JMU can translate to the big leagues, to the Big Ten. And it's exactly what happened. He won immediately. That could very well be the case at Oklahoma State. It once again, from a Baylor perspective, from a TCU perspective, even an Arkansas or a Kentucky, an Auburn, I wonder how Eric Morris slipped through the cracks for those universities. I have it on good authority from a couple sources that Morris would have been very interested in the Baylor job had it come open. There were too many schools that balked at bringing him in. Oklahoma State did not. I think they got the right guy. Eric Morris, especially because of the transfers he'll bring with him right away, will win in the Big 12 eventually. I like the hire a lot for Oklahoma State.
Drake, Arizona got the win against Arizona State, and now they finished their season with 5 wins, finished the regular season with 5 wins, and 9-3 on the year. Did you think Arizona would be at this kind of high at the end of the season when we were looking at this team at the beginning of the season?
Yeah, this is the biggest surprise in the Big 12 to me. Preseason, I had Houston finishing 9-3, and Houston finished 9-3. I loved what Willie Fritz's what his trajectory was, and I had their projections there because of their defense. So I personally wasn't shocked by Houston, though I know a lot of the conference was. I believe Arizona was headed straight for a 2-10 season, and instead the Wildcats finished the year 9-3 with a couple dominant wins to boot, surprising wins to boot. The fact they took BYU to double overtime in a tough contest, and then despite losing 3 of 4 in the middle of the season, they rattled off 5 straight wins to finish off the year, including going on the road and beating at the time a top 25 Cincinnati team, including pummeling Baylor in that fourth quarter, or going on the road and beating number 20 Arizona State in their final game of the season. Noah Fafita is a great quarterback. He's one of the top 5 in the Big 12 to end this year. I think Fafita should be in the conversation to be a draft pick in the first 3 rounds in the NFL draft this year. Surprised by Arizona, no doubt, because I believe the Brent Brennan experiment wouldn't go that well. And I struggled to believe the players were buying into Brent Brennan, but now it seems like they are, to the point that Arizona could be a force to reckon with next year as well. I'm buying Arizona moving forward. Very impressed and surprised with what they did in 2025, and their winning just made the Big 12 look even better.
Drake, make no bones about it, the wheels were wobbling in Fort Worth for part of this schedule for the TCU Horned Frogs about the Sonny Dykes experiment, about him coming back, even though he got them to the college football playoffs and to the championship. But did he just solidify another year blowing out Cincinnati at home with the lightning delay and everything that went on in Fort Worth, or is it still depending on what he does in the bowl game?
Yeah, I think he's marked safe. And so, I mean, Ward, it's a weird part of if he goes, and most coaches do, if he goes 5-7 his first year at TCU, then I think the spotlight's not quite as aggressive on him. If he just does the run-of-the-mill thing, walks into TCU and kind of builds them up year in and year out and struggles his first couple seasons, then puts it together with 8 wins this year, we're not looking at the lens of a TCU Horned Frogs team with the context of a national championship appearance. Instead, he decided, I guess, not begrudgingly, but it certainly didn't help him at all, to go compete against Georgia in the national championship game. And obviously TCU gets blown out. But following that season, you go into 2023, they miss a bowl game. And in 2024, they finish 9-4. In 2025, they finish 8-4. But now you've told the fan base that you're a coach who has national championship prowess, that you are the caliber coach that can go to the national title game as the leader of TCU. And once you've given your fan base that taste, it's hard to take it away. Baylor's facing some of that. I think Aranda's now proven that it's just not the right fit, possibly, long term. But when he came in and won the Sugar Bowl in year 2, you say, okay, this is the standard for us. You've shown me that we can do it. The question for that fan base now is, why aren't we doing it? And that's a tough question, I think, right now for TCU to answer. And their fan base is certainly getting rattled.
Drake Toll, Locked On Big 12, with us in the press box here on ESPN Central Texas. All right, one quick question before we let you go. Who wins on Saturday?
Yeah, as of right now, it's got to be Texas Tech. I do think the ball bounces a couple other ways. BYU makes it close. They cover the 13.5-point spread that it sits right now. But this is a 20-16 win for Texas Tech. They get them by 4 points. It'll be a tragedy that BYU's left out of the college football playoff. But if they lose, it seems like that's where the committee is going to go. I think Texas Tech wins this game, but they win it close, and that BYU hopefully gets into the postseason.
Drake Toll with us here in the press box. Drake, appreciate the time as always. Have a great week. We'll talk to you next Monday.
Ward, always fun. Go put the toys in the back of the truck. Put the toys in the back of the truck.
There he goes. Drake Toll, Locked On Big 12 with us.
Fun stuff as always. We'll see if Kalani stays, right?